We can have more discussion when I sort of complete my presentations. So first thing is, those who become alims, they, not all of them, most of them are humble, they get good education, good akhlaq, but there are few people who think they have mastered all knowledge. There is no end to knowledge. For me, the Alimiyyah course and even specialization are like the foundations. There is whole sort of buildings on top of these foundations. Knowledge is unlimited. And if you look at the great scholars, they specialize in a very narrow area and they spend all of their lives in these small areas. So there is no limit to knowledge. We can continue, and the courses of Alimiyyah are what I call the foundational knowledge, that in fact all Muslims should have that basic knowledge of Islam. Knowledge of seerah, knowledge of hadith, knowledge of basic fiqh, knowledge of halal, haram, basic history of Islam and things like that. So the first thing is what higher education does. It helps you to specialize a little bit more. And I will explain a little bit more in detail about what do I mean by this. But specialized knowledge means you look beyond the knowledge which you have into the world in which we live. And then you begin to think about, how do I apply my knowledge? Just as the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba and the Fuqaha and the great leaders of the past, they took on the challenges of their time and they applied Islam. They tried to solve human problems so that we can enjoin good and forbid wrong. So it's really looking up at the broader, bigger world, Islam and modernism, and the contemporary challenges of modernity that we are facing, how to inspire our future generations, how to bring Islam to the host communities, how do we remove fears and misunderstandings and make Islam relevant, that Islam is a universal deen. It was relevant 15 centuries ago, and it is as relevant today. The Quran Majid is the universal guidance of God for all humans, for all places, for all times. So it gives you a specialized knowledge, and that brings credibility. And with the higher education, the tools and the knowledge and the frameworks and the theories which you will learn, you will be in a better position to engage intellectually with Muslim scholars, but also with non-Muslim scholars. Now, if you look at some of the non-Muslim scholars who are specializing in Islam, just like our ulamas, they have also spent 30, 40, 50 years in studying Islam. In fact, I've seen some of them going much, much deeper than many of our ulama. So to engage, with the intellectuals of our time, you need to go into higher education and to navigate the issues and the problems and the challenges and the needs of people in the modern world. So that's first thing. Second thing is about higher education. It helps you to develop not only knowledge to become specialized, but knowledge skills. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. We had the feudal system where people mostly worked on the lands. There was no need for too much education. One or two people in a few villages was okay. Then we moved to the Industrial Revolution. There, the type of knowledge which you required were how to run the industries and scientific knowledge and other things. But what's happening over the last 30, 40 years, we are moving into a new age. And sometimes they call it, so the industrial age, now we're coming into the information age, or some people call it the knowledge sort of age. So what that means is more and more jobs in the future will be based on knowledge and knowledge skills. So knowledge is not information. You can get information from books, from tafsir, from hadith. You can just pick up the books. For example, you've forgotten a hadith, you can just quickly get access to it. That's information. But to understand that hadith, to apply that hadith in light of the Quranic guidance, and to make it relevant in the urf which we have, the customs which we have, that it requires critical engagement with that knowledge and that information, and say what is wise to apply and what is not wise to apply. Do we suspend some of the teachings as to wait for better times? Or so all those things need to be, so that knowledge skills is really about critically engaging with information and seeing what is relevant, what is not relevant, what are the strengths, the limitations of these information, which I can apply, which I cannot apply. These are knowledge skills. Be able to access information, be able to analyze that information, be able to make decisions and form opinions and fatwas based on that information, and then how to apply that. Because once you have a fatwa, it's not necessarily that the fatwa can be implemented. You have to create the conditions, to apply that fatwa. You all know that famous event where there was a famine during Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu's time. Some people started to steal, but he suspended the hudud, because it's the government's duty to create the conditions and to provide, help people to find jobs and other things. So it was temporarily suspended. So this is all comes with wisdom and application of knowledge. So higher education will help you in that. Second thing is, higher education also helps in your general personal growth, gives you confidence, gives you akhlaq, helps you to understand other people, communication skills. It improves your civic engagement, your engagement in your neighborhood, in your mosques, in your communities, and in the wider society. Because you have more knowledge, more understanding, you are able to, help in your own health and well-being, and many other personal benefits there are in higher education. And last, but for some people, this is the most important. But for Islamic scholars, this may not be as important, because we emphasize the spiritual and the moral, but material is also important. If you can't get good jobs, you're not able to properly bring up your children, give them the resources they need, again, that will create other kinds of problems. So we need to push our ulamas and our Muslim community members into high-skilled jobs. Through high-skilled jobs, not only they benefit themselves, but they begin to have an impact, and they're able to shape their professions and bring more and more ethics and morality into those professions. So because we are in a knowledge society, in the future, if you don't have a basic degree, then getting jobs in these professional jobs will become very difficult. So the basic requirement is a first degree. So all professional careers, whether it's medicine, engineering, accounting, business, pharmacy, you name it, media, they all look for a basic degree. Now, here's one thing that's why that links with my second and third point, is that once you graduate from any degree, it's not the knowledge you have acquired which carries on with you. Knowledge comes out of date as soon as you graduate, because knowledge is advancing so fast. But what these degrees do, like I said, knowledge skills, it gives you the tools, the perspectives, the frameworks, the approaches in order to find and develop and advance knowledge yourselves, to solve problems. Yeah, so this is what you will get from higher education. Okay, so this, and that will also help you to increase your wages as well, and will open up a lot of job markets for you. And I will come to later on where our graduates who are ulamas, they went into many different areas of their professional life. Okay, so any question, just stop me. Otherwise, I will move on. Now, let me say a little bit more about higher education. First, there is school education. Now, school education is compulsory up to the age of 16, but school education, you don't question the textbooks. You just learn what you are asked to learn. Okay, so up to school, you absorb the knowledge which your teachers give you, or which you learn from your parents, you learn from the environment, you just absorb. You're not developed enough to question, to challenge, to think differently from what you are receiving. So basically, exams and assessments are there to test, did you learn what you are asked to learn? So this is why at schools and colleges, you are called learners. At universities, you are called students, because at universities, you study. You don't just learn what the teacher gives you, but you begin to study yourself and arrive at your own understandings. So after school, we have further education, which is same as school, but a little bit more advanced. So whether it's mathematics or physics or chemistry or biology or sociology or whatever subject, it's more advanced, but it's still learning from books, learning from teachers, and understanding the formulas, the facts and figures which are given to you. Now, higher education takes students a little bit further. What higher education does is that students should not only learn knowledge, because that, like I said, that knowledge gets out of date and may not be relevant if you do not have other things. So higher education specializes you, just like A-level specialize you a little bit more, but a degree specializes you a little bit much deeper, but also teaches you how to apply that knowledge to emerging problems and challenges, and to apply that knowledge to new designs and new solutions, and also how to evaluate knowledge, knowledge claims, which I will talk a little bit more, and how to advance knowledge. So research methods and all these things become more important. So higher education gives you specialization. Independent learning means that you are able to study yourself, and the support of the teacher you had, you slowly are able to stand on your own feet. Just like a young child, they need the adults to hold him or her. As they begin to support themselves, they can walk themselves. Independent learning means you come up with your own questions. You're able to find information. You're able to question that information, not blindly follow that information, and arrive at your own evaluations, your judgments about that information, whether you should use it or not, and so on. There is a lot of rubbish information out there now, especially the internet. Islamic websites are misleading Muslims. So if a Muslim cannot be able to judge what they are reading or the information they get, they will be misled and they will not be able to apply their knowledge. So independent learning skills, and then advancing knowledge, or what we call knowledge creation. So we want you to understand the knowledge which was created by the ulamas of the past. Keep this in mind, it's not the be-all and end-all of everything. Knowledge has to continuously advance. So if you look at the golden age of Islam during the Abbasids time, ulamas were scientists, ulamas were doctors, ulamas were engineers. They didn't separate knowledge into compartments. Unfortunately, because of the secular influence, we say this is Islam and this is medicine. This is, it was in the mosques, they studied astronomy, mathematics, because it's all part of sacred knowledge. But if you look at what they did, huge leaps in medicine, astronomy, but they came up with an Islamic lens, an Islamic paradigm. If you just look at medicine today, medicine over the last 100 years or so, there was a movement which rubbished all other approaches to medicine and wanted to push a particular type of medical approach, and that is biological, chemical based. Every disease you have put a chemical in you, give you an injection, give you some tablets, is to treat but that may cause other problems. If you look at the Chinese and the Indians, they were more based on bringing balance back to human beings, that diseases, because there has been an imbalance. And it was based on natural remedies, the herbal medicines. All that knowledge is now beginning to be lost. And now we've got modern medicine, but new types of diseases are emerging. Some of the mental diseases were unknown in the past. So because Muslims also blindly followed this medicine movement, now this is dominant in the world. We want our ulamas to come and challenge the engineering paradigms, challenge the medical paradigms, challenge, all these other architecture and other things. I mean, take architecture. I can give a whole lecture on these things. In the 60s and 70s, this humans thought, now we've reached the moon and we've gone to the depths of the oceans. We don't need God. We are the masters now. And this arrogance then led them to create a new world. Now, in the 60s, a new thought, a rejection of modernism towards postmodernism arose. And what that thought was, that there is no universal truth out there. Everyone sees the world in different ways and everyone has the right perspective. Everybody can then shape their lives however they want. You want green and blue hairs? You can have that. You want pointed shoes? You can have whatever house styles and all of those things. So part of that movement was looking at the architecture, and they started to build these high rising flats in ordinary neighborhoods to save space, and they were driven by efficiency and all these things. Those very 10-story high flats where families were asked to live, I witnessed this with my own eyes. Over 30, 40 years now, they're demolishing those buildings. They realized that there's nowhere for children to play. It's creating all kinds of problems in those flats. So now they are re-looking, because if you look at Islam, they try to make courtyards to maximize human interaction. And so the whole concept of design came from a Tawhidi paradigm. We have left all that and we have become. So I want our ulamas to go into higher education and really specialize in an area where you've mastered the Western approaches, but you also are rooted in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and you have now another lens through which you see the world. The solutions you come up with, I guarantee you this much, they will be more powerful than what the Western world. Islam has not been seen yet in the West. They only see us Muslims wearing different clothes and Muslims eating curry and Muslims. We've not shown that intellectual side of Islam. So I really feel I need ulamas to come forward and re-look at the whole world and come up with a new paradigm, a new way of looking at the, and what's it called, Ismail Rajai al-Faruqi. He has passed away. May Allah give him a high place in Jannah. He's a Palestinian, a great thinker. He wrote a book, The Tawhidi Paradigm. Something needs to be looked at. But anyway, it's about creating knowledge by using new perspectives. Brother, I don't know how much time I've got, but if you want, I just want to elaborate on this point a little bit more. You are all ulamas. I don't know how many people are here on this group. How many are here? There is a verse in the Quran Majid, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. You all know Arabic and so on. Inna arsalnaka shahidan wa mubashiran wa nazira وَدَاعِيًا إِلَى اللَّهِ بِإِذْنِهِ وَسِرَاجًا مُنِيرًا. Now, I spent a lot of time reflecting over this. What does Shahid? What does Bashir? What does Nazir? What does Da'i mean? But I just want to share with you one of these points is Sirajam Munira. Now, some of the scholars took it in a scientific way. Maurice Bucoli and others, they said the Sirajam Munir means the one who radiates the light. So it's not the original light. So Prophet radiated the light to his society and so on. So anyway, there's a lot of meanings. When I put all these meanings together, I came up with which really made my body shiver. So I started to, think deeply about this for a long time. So when you look at Prophet was a Shahid, he lived by Islam, so people could see Islam through him. He was a Bashir. He articulated the good news. If you accept Islam, this kind of world will be created. A woman will be able to walk from Sana to Hadramaut without any fear. There'll be justice, there'll be peace. And so a Bashara in this world and Jannah in the hereafter. One Nazir, and he gave the warning, you continue in your way, this is what will happen in this world and the world hereafter. And Dai means he invited them to this way of life, this way of thinking, and Islam. And then Siraj Munir, when people started to come to Islam, he solved their problems, or he provided them with such powerful solutions, which were so illuminating, because he radiated Allah's guidance from the Quranic paradigm. He came up with these shining, convincing, great, balanced solutions that all other solutions looked pale and insignificant compared to what. I just give you an example. An example is a man comes to the Prophet ﷺ, and he said, "Oh, Prophet of God, I'm poor. Can you please help me from the Bayt al-Mal?" He was an elderly person and so on. Prophet ﷺ gave him something. Another person comes, he's young and strong, and he said, "Can I have?" Prophet said, "No, go back home. Whatever you got, bring it here, sell it, buy a rope, buy an axe, and you know the whole story." Now, this shows you the difference between a communist, capitalist, and Islamic solution. Communists just give from the Bayt al-Mal. The state looks after and people become super lazy. The capitalists have no safety net. Let them suffer, survival of the fittest. Islam, if you're elderly, weak, vulnerable, we will help you to stand. But if you are strong, you can stand on your own feet, the government will support you, give you ideas, give you the base so that you can stand on your own feet. So it does not make people dependent on the state. So if you look at the communist revolution in Russia, within 70 years, it collapsed. And because it made people, it killed all their initiatives. So a lot of the things we are seeing in our world are against fitrah, against human. Only the Quran, Majid, and the Sunnah of the Prophet can bring you towards this path. So sorry I'm going on, but knowledge creation is really a need of our time from the Quranic perspective. This is so important now. And also higher education prepares you for professional careers and jobs. And I will give you some ideas of the sort of jobs you can go into. Second thing is higher education, also builds these things. Confidence, creativity, leadership. Now in character, I put question marks because universities don't do that at all. Whereas we, being an Islamic higher education institute, we do emphasize indirectly, although it's not part of the curriculum, that we do expect people to have akhlaq and to develop this akhlaq, this character of a believer. But leadership, taking initiative, driving, all of this, bringing humans out of darknesses into light, this is all part of higher education. Now, this third point also helps you to understand what higher education is about. At schools, you learnt knowledge which we call just in case knowledge. Just in case you need to know Pythagoras theorem or some chemical formula or mathematical formula or some historical event. So it's just in case knowledge. Now, in my 16 years at school, I came here in 65. So most of my, I went to the infant school, junior and secondary school. All the things I learned at school, I really didn't need them in my whole life. Only adding up, take away, multiply, the basic things I needed. Fractions, yes, sometimes I need them. But a lot of things, just... So this was just in case knowledge, is to prepare the citizens in case a time comes when they need this, which is okay as well. And then there is now what we are seeing, a dangerous form of knowledge called just-in-time knowledge. You have a question, you put it into ChatGPT, you ask Google Scholar, and you get the responses. But the problem with that is it lacks depth, it lacks criticality, and is highly dangerous. So these Google Scholars, it's highly, you need to spend years like you are doing into getting the foundational knowledge. Otherwise, you can't challenge and criticize some of the information which you are getting. What Islam pushes for is ilman nafiya, knowledge that is useful to yourselves, useful to your families and neighborhood, useful to your community, and useful to your society. Yeah, if knowledge is not useful, then you should be solving problems. So choose a direction for your life and say, oh Allah, help me to specialize in this. I want to devote the rest of my life in this narrow area, and I want to help human beings in addressing their problems in this narrow area. You will leave a mark on the pages of history, inshallah. Yeah, it's an age of knowledge. So you need to become highly, highly specialized. I mean, for our students at Markfield, I invited a scholar, I can't remember now, maybe Nottingham University. He's a non-Muslim. And he gave a talk on the concept of Jahannam, the fire of hell. And all of our students are ulamas, they were sitting there, and there was pin drop silence in the lecture hall. And I could see their faces. They were absolutely amazed at the knowledge of this non-Muslim scholar. Now, he spent 20 years of his life in trying to understand the concept of Jahannam from Jewish, Christian, and Muslim sources. Well, just imagine 20 years on this. And so it's really amazing how specialized knowledge is. So this is what higher education is all about. Now, my next slide. So in summary, higher education helps you to develop in-depth knowledge, whichever subject you take. Critical reading. Critical does not mean negative. Critical means you read something with an open mind. You try to ask yourself, okay, what are the strengths of these arguments? And what are the limitations and weaknesses? What I can take and what I cannot take from this. That's what critical reading means. Now, where do we get this from the Quran? If you look at, there are, I think, 2 places this is mentioned. Sorry, on top of my head, لَقَدْ مَنَّ بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لَقَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ إِذْ بَعَثَ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا مِّنْ أَنفُسِهِمْ يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ. Now look at these 4. I've actually used these 4 things to design whole curriculums. What does yatlu alayhim ayatihi? So it's a great favor of Allah. He brought a prophet from amongst themselves. What does he do? He helps them to do tilawa of the signs. Yatlu, tilawa. What does tilawa mean? So I spent a long time trying to understand what tilawa is. For me, tilawa is not just recitation like a parrot. You memorize things and you recite them. Tilawa is actually critical reading. Prophet of God taught his companions how to read the signs correctly. What does ayat mean? Ayat, yes, Quranic, every verse is a sign. How do you interpret the Quran? But also the sun, the moon, the stars, the trees, the fish in the ocean, everything is a sign of the universe. How do you read these signs? Is the sun out there my God, or is a creation of God? Am I a master of the sun, or the sun is my master? How do I read this sign? So, critical reading, the rise and fall of nations, what is happening in the world today, these are signs which ulamas are expected to read critically in light of Quranic paradigm and Quranic understanding. This will help you to become commentators of what is really happening. I mean, one alim, I was so amazed, they looked at the Palestinian war and they said, Israel is winning the material war, but it has long lost the spiritual and the moral war. And anybody who loses the spiritual and the moral war, they don't have much future. I mean, it's a critical reading of the signs. So we push our students, to read whatever they read. I'm a strong Hanafi. All of my life, I have been a Hanafi, but I am a Hanafi through critical reading. I'm not a blind Hanafi. I am not a Hanafi because my parents were Hanafis. Yeah. So basically, in our first mosque in the 60s and 70s, we only had one mosque in Wolverhampton, Shias, Brelvis, Deobandis, everyone was together. And then we started to fight afterwards. But I was forced to study Shias, Deobandis, Brelvis, Salfis, and then arrive. So majority of the things I follow the Hanafi school. One or two things I give more preference to other opinion, like when I travel, should I combine, should I not combine? And basic things like that. But I'm a conscious Hanafi. I believe that Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah was the greatest fuqaha in the Muslim ummah, because some of the arguments I've read, others don't come anywhere near. But I have deep respect for everyone has been trying, to stay closest to the Quran and to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So critical reading will lead you to critical thinking. So anytime you hear the news, you read something, you are looking at, what are they trying to brainwash me with? How can I challenge this? So that's where critical thinking means. You also come up with new perspectives. You look at how they say the debate about Islamophobia is being framed. When they talk about immigration, they really mean Muslims. Yeah. So you begin to open up and challenge these frames of which debates are taking place, and you are able to offer alternatives. And then critical writing, and then research skills, and then employability skills mean that the world out there now, because people are working remotely, you need to be able to work with other people in teams, virtual teams. You need international and cross-cultural skills. You need leadership skills. You need project management skills. You need time management skills, and so on. These are called employability skills. So at higher education, you learn this, and then you apply them to solve emerging problems and also to engage with high-skilled jobs. Some of our alims, I don't want to mention some of the names because we may not be happy with some of the things which are happening, but there are few of our alims, they're working in think tanks, like Tony Blair's think tank and so on. And they are beginning to do policy research and guide policy about Muslims and so on. Local authorities are asking some of our students to collect data about Muslim communities, because there's a fear now. So in some cities, there'll be more than 50% Muslims. Yeah. What are the future policy implications on housing, on transport, on education, the need for Muslim schools, for elderly care, for all of these things? Yeah. Divorce rate is increasing. all of these things where ulamas have to play a role, and they conduct original research, and they can engage with the intellectuals of the West. So for me, once you have the foundational knowledge, you need to develop these things in order to become the Ghazalis and Ibn Taymiyyahs and Imam Abu Hanifas of our time. And you should have this. My brother, I felt a bit angry. He came to our study circle. He's 4 years older than me. I was only 16 years of age at that time. So he was 20 years. He came to our study circle and he said, I don't want to become like Imam Abu Hanifa or Imam Ghazali or Imam Ibn Taymiyyah or Ibn Kathir or any of our scholars. I felt a shock here. Why not? He said, I want to be better than them. Then I got hope. So basically, they were human beings. They took on the challenges, like Imam Ghazali took on the influence of Greek philosophy on Muslim mind. He mastered their work. Then he challenged them. We need ulamas to be like that now, to take on the challenges which we are. Otherwise, our children are being swept away. So can you see where I'm coming from? This is what I'm trying to do. Now, just to summarize, this summarizes what I said. Now, for ulamas to become the warasatul anbiya, this hadith which I've added on the screen, that the scholars are the warasatul anbiya. They are the inheritors or the successors of the prophets. For me, anybody who just has knowledge and can regurgitate that knowledge is not an alim. Sorry if I may offend somebody, but for me, a person to be a proper, deep alim, alims had status in they were seen as leaders, basically. Number one, an alim is the one who not only has specialized knowledge, but they have the ability to evaluate knowledge claims. So, for example, Christians are putting up certain knowledge about the Quran or about Isa alayhi salam. They are able to evaluate what they are saying, their strengths and their weak, and be able to challenge and say, look, this is where you're wrong and this is where you're right. Scientists are coming with something. You are able to evaluate, here you are right, here you are wrong. Historians are coming up with certain things. Here you are right, here. So you are able to evaluate knowledge. You can only evaluate knowledge through critical reading and critical thinking. That's the first step of an alim. They don't sort of accept the modern world and everything blindly. They even can question their own schools of thought and so on, because a lot of the traditions may not be closely aligned to the Quran. It's more cultural. Second is, an alim is the one who is able to apply knowledge to emerging problems. Yeah, how do we address our emerging problems? So that could also mean going through the classical sources and coming up with the most effective fatwa or solution for which we can use today, or coming up with new fatwas. Now here I give you an example. The Sharia Council in Birmingham, they had a problem. Somebody brought a problem that how long does a wife has to wait if she can't find her husband? Husband's gone missing. How long does she have to wait before she can get remarried? So the Sharia Council had a debate. Hanafis, I think they were saying 7 years. Wow, it's cruel. 7 years she has to wait. Others were saying something else. But Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, I think their school of thought said 1 year. So what the Sharia Council said, because of this now age of mobile phones and Google, and we can search and find people quickly and so on, they said 1 year. They decided, they gave the view to the woman that she has to wait a maximum of 1 year. So this is what I'm trying to say. And now divorce rate is increasing. It's a systemic problem now. It's not individual. It will not go away just through basic tarbiyah. How do the importance of marriage is not there. Yeah. So how do we address this problem? People, in the 60s and 70s wanted to buy a house. Where do they go? ulamas were really working hard. The Eid, which day is Eid? They've just thrashed all of these, but now there are many more economic, social, ecological issues now arising, like sustainable development. I'm teaching now Islam and sustainable development. And in my class, again, there are ulamas. Basically, they just said, we never thought about applying Islam to the ecology. Yeah, how the concept of mizan, how the concept of tawheed, how the concept of Islamic justice, Islamic concept, of adl and ihsan, and all these things can help us to, ensure balance ecologically and create more sustainable solutions. This is all about applying your knowledge to solve emerging problems. And the third is to advance knowledge, generate new insights, uncovering new principles, new structures, new laws, governing, human behavior, underlying balance and justice and wisdom and so on. By these three things, we'll be able to build better communities and a better world and put human beings on the right path. So this is the role of ulama, and this is for all scholars. Biologists have to do this, pharmacists have to do this, engineers have to do this, evaluate knowledge claims, apply knowledge, and advance knowledge. So if I say a few words about Islamic now, Islamic scholars who get higher education, they have to learn to extract principles from the ahadith, from the Quranic verses, from the practices of the early generations, extract the values and the knowledge, from all, and develop and the perspectives those people took in order to, develop our new solutions to bring social justice, environmental ethics, economic justice, more balanced moral education, and mental well-being of humans. If you look at economic justice, the West attempts to be champions of justice. But if you look at the standard of justice given by Islam, it's a standard for justice, even if it's against yourselves, even if it's against your parents, your near and dear ones, the rich or the poor. What is nationalism? My nation, right or wrong. My nation must have all access to all the resources. For that, if I have to kill whole countries, it doesn't matter. That's not the concept of justice in Islam. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. Who's going to raise the voice of these poor people? There is such economic exploitation that for 8 hours workers work. They bring so much profit to the companies, but the companies pay them peanuts. It's all, exploitation. So, ulamas need to engage with the trade unions, need to engage for human rights, need to engage in all of these things. Another concept here, unfortunately, Muslims have locked Islam inside the mosques or inside their hearts. It's all about personal piety. If you look at the prophets of God, they taught and they practice, we must not only have personal piety, but we must work for collective piety. If collectively we are corrupt people, there'll be no peace on this earth. We need to ensure that the whole society becomes pious. So that's where dawah, that's where enjoining good and forbidding wrong, and this is where hijrah and jihad and effort and striving comes in. And Muslim cannot be a passive Muslim, and Muslim cannot hide in a cave and just do Allahu all day long. They need to make their environment pure and pious and muttaqi and muhsin and so on. So you extract the principles to solve new problems. So Islamic studies is not limited to understanding the traditional religious scholars' roles, but the new emerging roles which are there for Islamic scholars. I want them to sit on the decision-making tables and be able to shape the policy of all countries. So scholars have to specialize in law, in finance, in all the areas where Islam can be applied. and Islam can be applied in, there's a halal certificate organization we are working with. I mean, they are beginning to use the latest technologies now in the halal food, cosmetic, chemicals industries, and so on. In community development, youth development, even the arts and the sciences. Islam is a way of life. Islam is not just related to puja part. Islam covers every area of life. So this is what higher education is all about. And these are some of the sort of jobs some of our students, graduates have gone into, but there's new areas emerging all the time. Yeah, very few have become imams or they want to become imams. Chaplains now in hospitals, prisons, universities, but also in the corporate sector, at the airports, in the Ministry of Defense. It's a new emerging area. When Russia attacked Ukraine, there was a fear we could have a wider war. And I think the Ministry of Defense, they started to plan that we need thousands of more chaplains, because soldiers now, they just can't fight. They just become so fearful and so on. So the chaplains are there to help them and counsel them. Counseling, therapists, religious education, teachers, youth workers, finance and banking, Sharia boards, mediators, arbitrators. More and more now, if you look at these relief organizations, Muslim Aid, Islamic Relief, Human Appeal, Muslim Hands, all these Muslim, they are now engaging with the United Nations level in sustainable development projects. Ulama is becoming policy analysts for local and national governments and think tanks. Ulamas are moving into media and journalism. Or yes, government is consulting ulamas to become cultural consultants. Like BBC goes to ulamas and say, we want to make this program, what are the sensitivities for Muslims? So they do consult on a lot of the cultural sort of areas. I mean, one scientist, I was in the Muslim Council of Britain on heading the research committee. They contacted me and they were going to publish some results of a research which they conducted in Kashmir. And they looked at the genes of the Kashmiri people. And from the genes, they analyzed, because many of the Kashmiris claim that they are Sayyids. And did they actually come from Arabia? So, and it was very sensitive. So, they asked at the Muslim Council of Britain for guidance whether they should go ahead to publish that findings or not. A lot of interfaith work is going on. Citizens UK is also working with many faith communities, but on actions to improve our everyday life. Universities, researchers and lecturers, and many other fields. Okay, if you allow me, I can quickly tell you about the Markfield Institute. This is very important for you to understand. Why we started was not to duplicate what anyone else is doing. The universities, about 6-7 universities, were offering some kind of Islamic studies with Middle Eastern studies, but they were highly from Orientalist perspective. And SOAS and many other, like Oxford University, they were actually set up to study the Muslim mind so that we can go and divide the Muslims. It was to support the foreign policy and colonization. So that's how they developed. At the other extreme, we had the Darul Ulooms, which gave the basic knowledge, but their qualifications were not recognized. So there was a gap in higher education. So the Markfield Institute was established to fill that gap. We have never ever been a particular school of thought or a sect. We invite Muslims from all, because we focus on critical thinking, critical evaluation, advancing knowledge. So we do get Muslims from Deobandis, Brelvis, Shias. We also get non-Muslims to come and study, because we have to teach the objective and the correct and we also deal with frameworks, not knowledge. Now, this is important for you to understand. For example, when we teach history, we don't really teach history, facts and figures, when this happened, when this king came. We teach the methodology for studying history. So the Orientalists have used this perspective. The other people have used Islamic approach to getting a critical and proper understanding of history is this approach. And once the students have these tools and methodologies and approaches, they can then study history themselves. So we are more interested in the tools and the frameworks and the methodologies for studying. So students to give them professional training, help our ulamas to get jobs, and also to become researchers. We have always from day one been validated by a university. That means the standards are checked by the university. We are registered by the Office for Student. Office for Student, like schools, you have a Ofsted, which is the regulating body. In a university, it's the Office for Student. We are also accredited by the British accreditation to show our quality and standards, and we can recruit students from other countries. We have a license. These are the courses which we offer, the BAs, the MAs, and the PhD programs. Now, for entry qualifications, there has been a discussion with the Balagh, and if I can just clarify, maybe some students have misunderstood and they are emailing me. Now, please keep this in mind. Some of these things are not in our control. So the Alimiyyah course, we sort of say is just between level 3 and level 4 equivalent. So anybody who has done the Alimiyyah course, plus they have GCSE equivalent English, we give them exemptions from level 4 and they can go into level 5. That means they can do their degree in 2 years. By 2 years, I mean 24 weeks, 24 weeks. Each semester is 12 weeks, so 2 semesters, 24, 24. So time goes very, very fast. Yeah. So without a degree, you can't do PGCE. You can have millions of master's degrees, but if you don't have a BA degree, no university in the UK will let you do a PGCE, a teacher's qualification as a course. So BA becomes, and there'll be a big gap between your knowledge. So that's what we are doing. And for Balagh, I said if we get a good cohort of people, we can even consider, showing some flexibility, some online and some in person. We can do that. Yeah, the fees, again, you have access to student loan, just like any other university. If you are international students, then the fee is slightly higher. And for postgraduate entry into any of our masters, you need a minimum of BA equivalent bachelor's degree. So these are the entry requirements. Okay, can I stop here if you have any questions? I have a few more slides, but I think I will stop here. Yeah, please don't hesitate. Ask any questions you want. Or you can email our info later on to get more. But I thought I'll give you a very unbiased picture. I know ulamas want to go into different fields, that's their choice. They can go into any university. But to study Islam, they have a limitation of choices, either the mainstream or the Markfield Institute. But the choice is yourselves. Age limit. There is an age limit. Because we are higher education, we cannot take any student who is under the age of 18, because that will then bring us into Ofsted, which we are scared of. We don't want to go into the Ofsted, higher education, and into safeguarding and a lot of other things. Yeah, and you can be, we had once a PhD student who started at the age of 80 or something. So there's no end. It's lifelong. You can develop your knowledge. But you have to be 18 or over. Second thing is to go straight into the masters. We will be very reluctant, to take anybody to the masters if they are under 21 years of age. But if they have the degree, we can look at it. But it's not a norm at universities, because you have to spend those 3 years or 2 years in building your. I did an Alimiyyah at Benton, Pakistan, and a BS. Okay, if you have a BSc degree and Alimiyyah, what you need to do, you need to send it to a UK government body called NARIC. It's called ETIC, I think the new name is. What that does, it takes your certificate and it produces another certificate which tells you what level is this certificate equivalent to. In Pakistan, some of the 12-year degrees are not equivalent to the UK degree, but the 14-year degrees may be equivalent. So some of the students who have masters in Pakistan, they may be equivalent to a BA degree, but NARIC will tell you it varies from university to university. And why we need that is because the UK government, the UKVI, UK Visa and Immigration, want to see that certificate. So they want to see whether your degree is equivalent to the UK degree. How to prepare a convincing standard operating procedure for admissions in, that we can help you. We can guide you if you want to apply as an international student to study at Markfield, inshallah. Because there are other requirements, IELTS, English, your degree or your qualifications. They need to, you have to pay your fees, and also in the bank, they want to see maintenance fees. There's other criteria, which you can find on our website under international students. Do you need, again, a degree in certain field, or are there other means to become? Oh, no, you don't need degrees or qualifications. You can become knowledgeable, but degrees are recognized. Without the paper, you are not recognized. So if you've gone through the whole degree course, but you don't end up with a certificate, employers, they do look for the certificate, so it helps. So this is a borrowed from Islam as well. This sunnat, what we call it, what do you call it? The teacher gives you the authority. Now you can, what do you call it? Ijaza. So it's like a certificate, So Binori town. Okay, what does that mean? You can come from anywhere in the world. You can come from anywhere in the world. We take students from anywhere in the world. Oh, sorry, there were other questions. I see, I'm an old man. I can't see properly. AI is transforming how societies, knowledge from algorithm. I did an Alimiyyah, how to prepare convincing. Do you need to gain a degree in certain fields? For instance, I am an Alimah, but have studied marriage and women's issues, and assist women in this process. I've critically analyzed. Now here, there's a slight problem. For example, I'm self-taught. There's nothing wrong with being self-taught. But if you want to practice and start giving advice to people on anything, and you've given advice which the other person found harming, they can sue you. This is why if you have a qualification and some kind of recognition from professional bodies, you become more protected. So this is why, like a doctor can have a lot of knowledge, but if they don't have doctor's qualification, you cannot practice in this country as a doctor. You may have more knowledge than the doctors, but at the end of the day, is that qualification and that stamp, now you are qualified. And the insurance companies, for your information, one of our alim in Birmingham, he gave some advice on divorce between husband and wife. So he said, the wife initiated it. So he said, look, basically he said divorce. He pronounced divorce. Kula, whatever is called. Husband didn't like it. He then tactfully got the alim into some kind of trouble, and he took him to court. So because I was the president of that organization, I immediately went and got this professional liability insurance for all of our ulamas, because now we are living in a world, even our own namazis, they are highly individualistic people. They don't care about anybody. They will sue you left, right, and center. In the mosque, one person slipped on the water and he tried to sue the mosque. So I put in a whole health and safety manual. I'm telling you the amount of things. So all of this, without professionals, experts, you can't move forward in this society now. Okay, any other comments? Yeah, there are. What will be the next best step for medical doctors with Alimiyyah? Okay, so now if I can give you two choices. If you don't want a certificate, then you can still join our second and third year classes for a fraction of the price. So you will get the knowledge, but you won't get a certificate. The reason why the price is there, because a lot of the money we get has to go to the validating university. And if the student is not recorded there with this proper fee, they will not issue the certificate. So if you want to learn and or the knowledge, we could put you with some checks and balances, but you have to understand you won't get a certificate at the end. Yeah, so that's possible. So you have a master's degree from a university in the States in demographics and hasn't really helped. What type of credentials would safeguard me in the work I'm doing? Marriage, mentorship, and women. So I would strongly advise you, there's a shorter courses as well, like we offer the chaplaincy course, which is all about pastoral care. We give a certificate at the end. Part of that is you work 60 hours placement. So you get this professional experience from university, prison, or hospital. And with all that, then you can apply to be registered as a professional pastoral care worker or linked with the institution, then that is possible as well. Yeah. But the basic qualifications you will need. So many of our ulamas don't go into higher education, but they do our chaplaincy course, which is 8 days, 1 day a month for 8 full days. You have to be there in person and 60-hour placement with a few assessments, and you get our certificate. And our certificate is beginning to be recognized now. With that and with your Alimiyyah, many people, you will see majority of the chaplains are now our graduates. But if you want to become qualified teachers and then you need a degree. And many people do our master's degree not for jobs or anything. For example, these are teachers and headmasters. They want to understand the Islamic approach to education. So in our master's in education, Islam and education, we teach the classical Islamic approaches and the Western approaches, and then see if students can get the best out of both of them in order to shape the curriculums, the policies, and give the best learning experience to students. Can we do a job in the UK? Oh, yes. Yeah, if you're not from the UK, these may be questions which you feel, no, alhamdulillah, in the UK, we are quite free. Many of our sisters are working in very professional jobs, even as doctors and engineers and as managers, wearing the Islamic, clothing according to the hudud. Yeah, there is no problem whatsoever. Yes, few places, but these are very, very few. We are worried Islamophobia is rising. We are worried if Muslims don't join their hands and work together to remove these misunderstandings about Islam, things could get worse. But alhamdulillah, at the moment, things are really good. Things are okay. So I hope this was beneficial to you. And if you have any more questions, you can always, you can always email go to our website, Markfield Institute of Higher Education, email info@𝗵𝗍, M-I-H-E, Markfield Institute of Higher Education, 𝗵𝗍.ac.uk. And even if you don't want to be students or anything, we can help you. Most of our lecturers, the criteria is they must have a minimum of a PhD. So they are all academics, and they do understand the higher education deeply. So anybody can advise you there. Thank you. Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.